Imagine a world where a mysterious illness sweeps across continents, wiping out nearly half the population. It sounds like the plot of a disaster movie, right? But this was the terrifying reality for people in the 14th century. This is the story of the Black Death, the deadliest pandemic in human history. Our story begins not in Europe, but in the vast arid plains of Central Asia in the 1330s. A bacterium, Yersinia pestis, had been living quietly in flea-infested rodent populations like marmots. But as climate change and ecological shifts occurred, these rodents began to die off. Their fleas, desperate for a new host, jumped to other animals, and eventually to humans traveling along the burgeoning trade routes of the Silk Road. The Silk Road was the internet of its day, connecting East and West, facilitating the exchange of goods, ideas, and unfortunately, disease. Caravans carrying silks, spices, and unseen microbial stowaways moved steadily westward. By the late 1340s, the plague had reached the Crimea, a bustling hub of trade on the Black Sea. It was here, at the Genoese trading post of Kaffa, that one of history's first recorded acts of biological warfare took place. During a siege, the attacking Mongol army, ravaged by the plague, began catapulting the infected corpses of their dead soldiers over the city walls. The horrified Genoese traders, seeing the plague spread within their city, fled, but they couldn't outrun the disease. They took it with them on their ships. In October 1347, 12 Genoese galleys docked at the Sicilian port of Messina. The people of Messina gathered at the docks, eager to see the exotic goods from the east. What they saw instead was a horror show. Most of the sailors aboard were either dead or gravely ill, covered in strange black boils that oozed blood and pus. The Sicilian authorities quickly ordered the death ships out of the harbor, but it was too late. The Black Death had arrived in Europe. The fleas carrying Yersinia pestis were expert travelers, hitching rides on the black rats that infested every corner of medieval life, from ships to homes. Once a person was bitten, the disease took hold with terrifying speed. There were three main forms. The most common was the bubonic plague, named for the buboes painful. Swollen lymph nodes in the groin, armpits, or neck. These could grow to the size of an apple and would often turn black as the tissue died, giving the plague its ominous name. This was accompanied by high fever, vomiting, and delirium. Without treatment, which didn't exist, death was almost certain within a week. Then there was the pneumonic plague, which attacked the lungs. This form was even more terrifying because it could be spread directly from person to person through infected droplets from coughing. It was almost 100% fatal. Finally, the septicemic plague occurred when the bacteria entered the bloodstream directly. This was the deadliest of all, often killing its victims within hours, sometimes before any symptoms even had a chance to appear. From Italy, the plague spread like wildfire across Europe. It moved along trade routes, rivers, and pilgrimage trails. By 1348, it had engulfed France, Spain, and England. By 1349, it had reached Germany and Scandinavia, and by 1351, it had even made its way to the remote lands of Russia. No one was safe. It struck the rich and the poor, the young and the old, the clergy and the commoner. Entire villages were wiped off the map. Cities like Florence and Paris lost up to half their populations. In a world dominated by faith, people desperately sought an explanation. Was this God's punishment for humanity's sins? Many believed so. This led to a surge in religious fervor. Processions of flagellants marched from town to town, whipping themselves in public displays of penance, hoping to appease an angry God. Ironically, these gatherings only helped to spread the disease further. Others looked for scapegoats. Tragically, Jewish communities were often blamed, accused of poisoning wells. This led to horrific persecutions and massacres across Europe. Despite the fact that Jewish people were dying from the plague at the same rate as everyone else, doctors at the time were helpless. Their medical knowledge was based on ancient Greek theories of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. They believed disease was caused by an imbalance of these humors, or by miasma, bad air. Their treatments were useless and often harmful. They tried bloodletting, lancing the buboes, and prescribing strange concoctions of herbs and crushed emeralds. Doctors wore bizarre, bird-like masks with long beaks filled with aromatic herbs. believing this would protect them from the foul air. It didn't. The social fabric of Europe began to unravel. Fear and paranoia reigned. People abandoned their sick family members. Priests refused to give last rites. Workers refused to bury the dead. Law and order collapsed. So many people died so quickly that proper burials became impossible. Mass graves were dug, but they quickly overflowed. In cities like Avignon, the Pope consecrated the entire Rhine River so that bodies could be thrown into it and still be considered buried on holy ground. The world seemed to be ending. The writer Giovanni Boccaccio, who lived through the plague in Florence, described the complete breakdown of society in his famous work, The Decameron. He wrote of people shutting themselves away, others indulging in wild parties, believing their deaths were imminent, and of the eerie silence that fell over the countryside as fields lay fallow and livestock roamed free. By the time the first wave of the plague subsided around 1351, it's estimated that between 30% and 60% of Europe's population was gone. That's anywhere from 75 to 200 million people. Think about that for a moment. It's a number so vast it's hard to comprehend. It was a demographic catastrophe on an unprecedented scale. But out of this unimaginable devastation, a new world began to emerge. The Black Death was a profound turning point in European history. With so many people gone, the most immediate effect was a severe labor shortage. Suddenly, the peasants and laborers who survived found themselves in a position of power. They could demand higher wages and better working conditions. The old feudal system, where serfs were tied to the land and worked for a lord in exchange for protection, began to crumble. Many peasants were able to buy their freedom and move to cities, seeking new opportunities. This massive social and economic shift had huge consequences. Land ownership patterns changed. The power of the traditional nobility weakened. A new, upwardly mobile middle class of merchants and artisans began to grow in influence. Innovation was also spurred on by the labor shortage, leading to the development of new labor-saving technologies. The plague also had a deep impact on religion and culture. The church's inability to explain or stop the pandemic, and the deaths of so many clergy, weakened its authority in the eyes of many. This disillusionment helped pave the way for the Protestant Reformation a century and a half later. Art and literature became obsessed with death and mortality, a theme known as memento mori, or remember you must die. The Black Death didn't just disappear after 1351. It returned in smaller, less devastating waves for centuries, a constant terrifying reminder of humanity's vulnerability. It wasn't until the 19th century, with the discovery of germs and the development of modern sanitation, that the plague was finally brought under control. Today, thanks to antibiotics, the plague is treatable. But the story of the Black Death remains a chilling and powerful lesson. It shows us how interconnected our world is, how quickly a disease can spread, and how a pandemic can reshape societies in ways no one could ever predict. It's a stark reminder of the fragility of civilization and the enduring power of nature. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into the past fascinating, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into history.